Hello and welcome, this is Redditosker, and today I want to talk about Elden Ring. More specifically, I want to talk about the 20 minutes of gameplay that we recently got access to, and the community's reaction to seeing that 20 minutes of gameplay. You see, for a while now there have been concerns regarding Elden Ring's graphics. And while I think this trailer has alleviated the worries that a lot of people had, there remains a small minority of people that are very unhappy with the graphics. Or at least somewhat unhappy, and have been expressing their disappointment. Let me give you a few examples of what I'm talking about, specifically.
It's honestly sad that From Software has had all this time to make a good game and Bluepoint has completely outclassed them. This is going to be Cyberpunk all over again, mark my words.
Here's another one.
Looks like Dark Souls 3-2 with open world stuff. I expected more. Same sounds, same visuals. Should be a standalone expansion, not a full release in my opinion. From Software being lazy for the last 10 years. Doesn't mean it's bad, just that it doesn't look inspired at all, it's pre-chewed. Anyway, From Software simps will still buy this unfinished game day one.
You've probably noticed a trend by now, but let's just do one more.
Well, the graphics of Elden Ring are objectively bad. If you compare them with most other action adventures, which came out in the last 5 years, or are about to come out, like God of War, Horizon 1-2, Cyberpunk 2077, The Last of Us 2, RDR2, Ghost of Tsushima, Ratchet & Clank, Spider-Man, Forspoken, Dying Light 2, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, Demon's Souls Remake, Shadow of the Colossus Remake, you will realize that all of those games have better graphics than Elden Ring will have.
Alright, so you get the general idea. But the point of this video isn't just to shame those people. I'm not out here to try and embarrass them or point out how they're wrong. As far as I can tell, these people are in the overwhelming minority. And as a result, they probably hear enough of that from the rest of the community. No, what I want to do is something altogether different. I'm going to try in this video to address these people's complaints in a serious way. To really try and understand what it is that they're saying, and then I'm going to represent their argument in the strongest and most fair light possible. And then having done that, and only after I've done that properly, I'm going to try and explain why I think that From Software has decided to make these choices, why they've decided to allocate their resources how they have, and why they're going in the direction that they are. Now, before we really get into it, we need to properly frame this discussion. And to do that, I think we need to really make it clear that this is not about the graphics. Not really. I've spent the last day and a half doing research, both by looking at the posts of people that are complaining, and by talking to people directly that are currently dissatisfied with what they've seen. And after having done that, I've realized that strict graphical complaints are not what most of these people are talking about. In fact, it's actually far more common to see a comment like this, where before the 20-minute gameplay reveal, they were a little worried and dissatisfied based on the 20 seconds of gameplay clip that we had previously, but now having seen how it's actually going to play out, they're more than happy. So no, I don't think it's about the graphics, and so I'm not going to be arguing that position. What I found, the common thread that I've seen throughout a lot of these arguments, is that what people are really unhappy with are the reused animations. Let me just show off some of the more reasonable examples that are significantly less caustic than the ones I showed previously. Yeah, I was expecting Elden Ring to take the gameplay into a different direction, like Bloodborne and Sekiro did, but it just looks like we'll have Dark Souls 3.5. I'll hold out full judgment until I play it though. Judging from the replies literally everywhere, I think I'm like the few that's actually let down by that it's basically Dark Souls 4. Really wanted something newer, like how they took a turn with Sekiro. I only have a problem with the recycled Dark Souls 3 animations. What concerns me is that it just looks like Dark Souls 3.5 or open world Dark Souls. My only worry is the recycled animations, nothing fundamentally wrong with that, but it takes away from Elden Ring's identity to be reminded of a different game every time an animation looks familiar. Alright, so you've noticed the trend, I'm sure. This version of the argument is the most common argument. They don't like that Elden Ring is using so many animations that are identical to Dark Souls 3. And really that is the heart of what they're saying. But let's go ahead and steelman their argument. After talking for a while with some of the people that hold these kinds of opinions, I think I finally understand why this is so much of a problem for so many people. Why they're complaining even though some of these people have played all of the Souls games and have never complained on any of them before. And in fact, having heard what they have to say, I think they have a point. You see, on some level what's happening with Elden Ring actually is unusual. Because while some people will say that From Software have been reusing animations for a decade, and strictly that's true, but they've never done it so much from one game to another. Just as an example, take Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2. Strictly in terms of animation, the difference between Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2 is significantly larger than the difference between Elden Ring and Dark Souls 3. And similarly, the difference between Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 3 is also comparatively large. Now I'm sure Elden Ring is going to add in more new animations. In fact, we've already seen some interesting stuff with the weapon arts and the shield block and the counterattack, as well as how some of the spells function. They look considerably different. However, the existing base reused animations, such as the parry, the walking, some of the attacks, are identical. And the reason that people find that so jarring is that up until now, even between games of the same series, the animations have not been reused to this same degree. And so From Software's own track record of what one game looks like compared to the next is working against them in people's expectations. And this issue is exasperated considerably by the fact that Elden Ring is a new IP. The other two From Software IPs that have some of the Souls DNA are Bloodborne and Sekiro. And those are massively different than any of the Souls games, in a lot of regards, at least in comparison to each other. In those cases, not only are the animations different, but the gameplay is different. The gameplay speed and the way parries and dodges work is different in both of them. And while you can still spot similarities with Souls games, their differences are so stark that it really highlights their own identity. But with Elden Ring, even though the differences are there, you can tell that they're there, both in animation and in gameplay. Those differences are not what is catching people's eye. What's drawing some people's attention is not the differences, but the similarities between it and its predecessor. And so, what people are complaining about, what they're worrying about, is that Elden Ring is not going to have some of that visual uniqueness that the other games enjoy. And so in that light, I find a lot of their complaints unsurprising, actually. Because even if you disagree with me that Dark Souls 1 and 2 is significantly different than Dark Souls 3 and Elden Ring, at least in terms of animation, first of all, I'd think you were wrong, but more importantly, there's no way you could make the same argument for Bloodborne and Sekiro, which is the more comparable example, because Elden Ring, like them, is a new IP that draws on parts of the Souls formula. So, okay. I hope I've well illustrated what I think the problem is with a lot of people, and I think I've demonstrated that I understand their point of view. But now I'd like to explain why I think that this is happening, and why I think that maybe this is actually a very good thing. First of all, let me quote a bit from an interview with Miyazaki where he's discussing Elden Ring. Quote, "The gameplay is not so far from Dark Souls. That doesn't mean that the gameplay will be identical, but you could say that Elden Ring belongs to the same genre." The interviewer goes on to bring up Bloodborne and Sekiro, both of which the interviewer would consider being part of the same genre. However, according to Miyazaki, Elden Ring goes beyond simply bringing new twists to the formula. By adding a larger and more open environments, he believes that the game will evolve on a larger scale. Quote, "With a larger world, new systems and action mechanics inevitably become necessary. In that sense, I think Elden Ring is a more natural evolution of Dark Souls." The interviewer then asks them, "Weren't all of your games kind of open world and interconnected anyway?" To which Miyazaki responds, "While the narrow and complex dungeons of our previous games were indeed interconnected, Elden Ring's environments will be much more open and vast. The more extensive world will form the base of Elden Ring's gameplay, and its mechanics are designed with that type of environment in mind." I'm just going to read one more part of the article. Miyazaki gives 3 reasons as to why he wanted to introduce this new type of environment: showing the game's world and lore on a grander scale, adding more freedom and depth to exploration, and creating more variation to battles. As an example of how Elden Ring's new scale will change the Souls-like formula, the main character will be able to traverse on a horse with the ability to fight enemies while mounted. While combat in Dark Souls was focused on positioning yourself favorably, even in small rooms and narrow corridors, Miyazaki believes that the more open environments can create more diverse situations. Now, rereading this article, after having seen the 20 minutes of gameplay, has given me a new perspective and a new appreciation. From what I've read here, it seems to me that Miyazaki believes that the depth of Elden Ring, the difference in it, will come from the fact that it's so large and open. That its identity isn't going to come from a twist like in Bloodborne and Sekiro, or by being radically different to Dark Souls 3, but the fact of its scale on its own will change the tempo of combat dramatically. That just by the fact that it's a big open world, that it's in fact big Dark Souls, will actually make it a whole new thing by itself, systemically change how the game is played. What he seems to be saying is that this open world is going to bring in unexpected depth. That adding it to the existing formula changes that formula in ways that are surprising. And that the game's uniqueness will come from that. Now that said, I want to end this video by pointing out something that I mentioned in a previous video of mine. In my last lore video, I mentioned the fact that I believed that the painter from Dark Souls 3's Painted World DLC was actually Miyazaki, metaphorically. That the fact that she needed fire and the blood of the Dark Soul as the pigment to create her new painting was actually symbolic of the fact that Elden Ring, or whatever new projects that From Software will tackle, will have some of that Dark Souls DNA, will have the best parts of Dark Souls without being Dark Souls themselves. My point is that I think that Miyazaki has been iterating and refining a very specific game for a very long time. That ever since Demon Souls he's been making changes to the formula, adding things in and taking things out, and that the fact that these animations made it back wholesale is not a sign of From Software or Miyazaki being lazy. It could be simply that they're happy with how they are, that there's nothing wrong with the animations as they are, and that they had to make the decision to prioritize other things, that they perhaps have decided to focus on the scale of Elden Ring, rather than changing things that they were probably already mostly happy with. Now, that's the end of this video. I hope that I have sufficiently angered both sides of this debate. If I have, please make sure to unsubscribe, unclick the bell notification, please leave a nasty comment, but not so nasty that the YouTube algorithm automatically censors you, just nasty enough to make people angry. And if I still have not alienated you, then I will get to you in a future video. Until then though, thank you very much for watching.